Hi. I'm a little off center, but hello. I'm going to be doing the solo for a little bit. John is running late, and so I will be here, and we're going to be talking about fun stuff tonight. But obviously, if I have that unmuted. Hello, everyone. See, everyone's joining. Yeah, so John should be here around 6:20, I think is what he said to me. He's stuck in traffic at the moment. Um so yes, so I am going to be starting us off this evening. He magically started Cade started the stream tonight so that I could join you while we wait for him to join us. Yes, indeed.
Daddy went
The
outside.
yeah, I know, honey.
And I waved at him.
Okay.
And he said hi.
All right, we'll get started very shortly. I'm gonna pull some stuff up. But yes, welcome everyone. Trying to make sure I'm staying mostly centered in this frame here because my camera's a little off center at the moment. See if that'll do. All right. Helps if I unmute my mic. Hi, Vivi. Hello, welcome. We will be starting very shortly. Respike the chair. Yeah, and that would be a great idea if my camera was always here. But normally the other spot is the correct spot. Oh yeah, me too. Just a little bit. So yeah, we are tonight's topic, just as we're getting started here, and then we'll have a few more minutes, but tonight's topic, we're talking about D&D, and specifically like risk, the level of risk, death, permadeath versus not as permadeath, and what comes next. So yeah, we'll be chatting about that here. If you guys have any questions about anything, I will I will answer them as best as I can. And we will be getting started very soon. Hi, Robert. How are you? Yes, it is ironic. Uh, oof. Yes. Yeah, the what comes next part in particular, because I've been working on that bit since a couple days ago, before Tuesday night stream actually. I'm doing well, thank you. Yeah, it's been going pretty good today. So, yes. How many characters has everyone had that has died? Well, Millie is my first permadeath. I've had a couple in other campaigns who were either very close or I had one that was brought back for story reasons. What are my thoughts on permadeath? It kind of sucks when you're the person playing the character, but it's not. I don't know if it's a bad thing. Well, and we'll go more into that in a little bit. I'm just making sure that everybody has a chance to join. We've got 5 more minutes. Hi, John. Yeah. Oh yeah, that Cruendithus would be yours, wouldn't it, Chris? I'm keeping her safe. Just keeping the seat warm for him until he gets back. Ooh. Does twitching count? I don't know, does it? Yep, Corundithus. Yeah, he did. He was taken out by a displacer beast right after I painted his mini, so maybe I'm just cursed. Yeah, yes, very much so. All right. That's fair. That's fair. Though Bruel has done well. He's made it all the way to a massive dragon. Yes, exactly. Yes, that. Oh, it was Bruel, not one that you had gotten. It's just one he pulls from. Anything working on late with D&D or your podcast? Well, all right. So, I actually just finished my new backstory today for my next character. So that was pretty fun. Um, Other than that, I keep staring at my unpainted plastic shame. Needing to paint things. But the podcast has been on hiatus for a couple weeks with Terry in tech for his show. But we should be doing another of the D&D podcast tomorrow night if everything goes as planned. And the World of Warcraft one will resume next Monday. What? Oh, is that how we do it? I see. I should not have it all set out where I can see it. But yeah, so yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get us a little bit into this. So we play retail. We delved into classic a little while back, but we primarily play retail. We've been raiding in Shadowlands actually, which is the newest expansion that's out. We are totally allowed to talk about the events of last night. If you have any questions about anything related to last night's events, you are welcome to ask. I will answer any questions as best as possible. Yes. Yes, so go for it if you have any questions about any of that. And then while I give the chat chance to catch up. So yeah, how do I resurrect my best friend? You find a very, very high level cleric somewhere and befriend them, and then it still doesn't happen. Because that's the way of things. Yeah. Uh if you preserve Millie's corpse, you can take it back to an level 13 cleric to bring her back. I mean, possibly. In denial, and it feels so good. That's right, baby. Oh, oof. Yeah. Oh, what mistakes did the players make in that encounter that contributed to Millie's death? I mean, I could start off with the fact that Millie contributed to her own death by continuing to poke at an Umber Hulk without disengaging. That might have been a part of what led to her death. I did not kidnap him till Millie comes back, but I don't know about Vivi. She might she might have done the deed. But no, besides trying to save Asher and the Queen of Evil is still in hiding. Yeah, I mean that was our first fault, right? Right, Robert. No, I mean there were things that happened that I think caused yeah, the corridor choke point was a big one. Just everybody not pushing into the space a little more. That would have helped a whole lot because we were all kind of gathered up in one spot, which caused Shorwin to get knocked out of a round of combat, as well as nearly flattening Gimbal underneath a bear. So yeah, that would be one of the big moments that can we kill Ashrin instead and bring Millie back? Thanks, asking for a friend. Oh, oh no! The white shiver is only for Ashrin. That's why we went through all of this. Millie died to make sure that that white shiver got back to Ashrin. Must be done. Must be done. So while you guys continue adding things, um can you tell bargaining? I would say bargaining. It would be the stage of grief that you are currently in. DM's Quest. I don't know. It doesn't want Vampire Millie. I think Vampire Millie would be extremely fabulous and would be extremely powerful as a vampire. But no. Uh, she also may make an appearance as an NPC in my campaign in a different format later on once I get that done. I was actually considering that after last night's session, so we'll see about that. But yeah, so let's just get a little bit started into this, and I will still obviously answer your questions about last night's game as we go. But so I Dead Millie, no, especially not with a lawful good person in our party. That would not fly. Um so I'm gonna skip ahead to the what comes next part of the topic tonight because I've been kind of working on that right now. And so you know, once you have your character permanently die, what do you do next as a player, and that is a very good question. And it re-emphasizes constantly the need for having backup characters. Backup characters are read the will. Yes, that's a good thing to do. But but yeah, backup characters as a player are very important to have. And no matter how much you might not want to give up your character because you love them so, because it's hard, it's good to have a backup character. And I actually kind of made sure to have several different ideas in place so that I could easily roll up something in case of a situation like this. Drown your sorrows in Dr. Pepper. So I was looking at different things, and one thing really exact same character with a different name. See, that is a thing that depending on on the party, um uh might make sense. I definitely didn't want to play the anything close to the same character with a different name. That just does not interest me. uh have you started production of Glitter Bomb? We don't talk about glitter here on Blue Box RPG. It is verboten. um but yeah, so um i uh i I have had several characters that I was considering, and one of them just kind of no, she's not an angry relative of Millie's, I will tell you that much. But yeah, so I also had ones that I was considering, and I actually there was one that I particularly was interested in that jumped out at me. So that's the one I rolled up, and we will be meeting soon. Um yes, I finished her backstory today. Not a cleric, not a cleric. Um, but who has the ability to heal every now and then, given the opportunity. Um, And that's all I'm gonna say. No spoilers, y'all. I'm not gonna tell you anything about the new character yet because you gotta wait. But yeah, so back to the point I was making. It's very important as a player to have backup character options, or even just a backup character ready in case of death. A good D&D game always has death as a possibility, and that is something that especially with playing with John for as long as I have now, is something that I was aware of and I always kind of had in the back of my mind. And So that's step one. And After that, you start making considerations of, okay, now I'm bringing this character into a already established party, which it depends on the party dynamic, how easy or difficult that might be. This new character is coming into a party at a very sad time in there. You should give us spoilers. We'll give you Oh, don't disadvantage me. I'm not. You'll guys will meet her soon. She's starting at level 5. I will tell you that much. Uh, no, Shorewin is no longer the new guy. But yeah, so coming into an established party can be really difficult, especially depending on. Yeah, she is a she. I like playing female characters. That's what appeals to me. Uh, um, so yeah, coming into an established party dynamic, um, depending on where the party is and kind of what has been established up to this point, can be a very challenging thing. And hello, Real Longshot, welcome. It is so good to see you all tonight. Um, but yeah, so that consideration of, okay, what am I coming into? Uh, Yes, 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 yes. Um, need to specialize in percussion instruments. Make as much noise as possible. Um, but yeah, so John has plans, I'm very sure, and we've talked a little bit about potentially how she might fit into the actual coming in aspect of things. Um, though that depending on where things go, obviously that has the possibility of shifting. But yes, you know, I previously I have actually come into an already established party as Irda, actually. Irda joined the Heroes of Sandpoint fairly early on into their journeying together, so it was easier for her to come in because it wasn't bald dwarf wizard with a beard, because you have to have beards. Um oh my gosh, the visuals. But yeah, so you know for Irda, it was easier coming into that cleric magician. um it was easier to come into that because things had kind of gone sideways, but no one who was terribly attached to anyone else, died horribly. Um, but it's a little bit different for this new character, so I'm excited to see, how she's going to fit into that dynamic with everybody else. Um, but yeah, so finding your place as a new player in that, and working with your DM to make sure that um they come in at an appropriate time is always the adventure as a player character within an established campaign. So yeah. Oh dear. Bringing a missile weapon with decent range. I will not answer that question, Tim. I will not confirm or deny that question, Tim. It'll be hard to not knowing things about the other future friends as a new character. Yeah, it actually will be challenging. I think that one of the most challenging things as a player coming back into a group as a new character is forgetting that you know everything about, or at least most of everything about the people that you're playing with. You know, you have to remember that this character is completely unfamiliar with the existing people. Um, uh, and so you have to remember to separate your what you know brain and what you don't actually know brain, and not being friends instantly. Exactly. Yeah. And this character I doubt would make friends very, very instantly. She's not. She's definitely not as charismatic as Millie. No, that is not the case. Will Shorewin be okay? I don't know. He seemed like he was having a very, very rough night last night. He's been having a rough time lately. He's nearly died several times. Yes. Yes. Indeed, it will be interesting. So continuing on, uh the how about Shorin's sister? No. Rewatch the episode where yeah. Uh I don't think she'll hate Lilith. I don't think anybody could hate Lilith. Will she come with a furry friend? Maybe a rabbit. There will be no rabbits. His internal struggle is going to be intense. Yeah, it will be. I don't think John is a killer DM so much as the dice sometimes do not roll in our favor. And sometimes they roll very much in our favor. He will be okay. He has Winston. That's true. If anybody who has Winston would be okay. Pet Dino. Okay. But anyway, so we've talked a little bit in the past about character death and like risk in D&D. It was the party's fault. There were a lot of contributing factors to what happened to Millie. It was not entirely the party's fault. It was not entirely the dice's fault. It was a lot of stuff going on. Yes, exactly. Hello, hi Jay, welcome. This is Loremaster's Arcanum that is being run by me tonight until John gets out of traffic. So yes, but yeah, so the risk level is something that as a DM you go in and you have to consider upfront, and we've talked a little bit about that before. You know, how dangerous do you make it versus how safe do you make it, and it it has to be well balanced. And there's a really great quote actually from Dragon Magazine. It's what 144. That basically it was a part of a longer article, but the passage stuck out to me. Um, exactly, challenge is very important. But the passage just jumped out to me, and it is, if a role playing game lacks any possibility of character failure or death, it quickly devolves into forays through a Monty Hall gilded hole that also lacks excitement. If a game does have the possibility of character failure or death, then sooner or later characters will fail and die. It's no fun to have a well beloved character die. The tug of war between game balance and wish fulfillment. Not everyone has the maturity and discipline to see how necessary the risk of failure is for success to have any meaning. And that stuck out to me quite a bit, because it is important for our characters to fail. And you know, you don't want everybody to be fallen dead constantly, but you definitely have to understand that failure needs to be part of the. Yes, exactly, you cannot have payoff without a risk. And you learn, I think, best from failure anyway. This is something that you know for that everybody experiences, in game or out. That you know to fail, we learn that okay, this didn't work, we need to go about this differently. And so, there was a very good possibility that maybe the party should probably have run away from that Umber Hulk last night, and kind of hinting to the players, if nothing else, that running away is okay sometimes. That you don't always have to kill the thing if it's not looking good for you, if prospects are not faring well. And there have been times in the other campaigns with John that we've actually have done that. The party has chosen to not engage. You attack from range first, yes. Unfortunately, in that cave, the range was not really a possibility, and we learned from seeing all the scratch marks down the wall that he was able to fit in many of those corridors, and it was probably better to fight him in that cabin room than it would have been in the tighter hallways. So hindsight and all that, but the risk is a struggle with some DMs. I know that some that will not kill characters, they just can't do it. See, it needs to be a possibility. It needs to, if everyone finds real, or if your players realize that they are invincible, they will make bad choices. And so we don't want we want our players to have fun and enjoy themselves and to not make bad stupid choices. So they need to be able to die and not be not be invincible. And it just becomes not as fun, I think, as a player personally, if there's no chance. So yeah, if there's not a chance to fail in that way, there are obviously different levels of failure, but like you need to be able to fail and fail big, and making sure you keep that balanced well is really important. um I mean, that's not necessarily true. It depends on what sort of game you like to play too. Lots of people prefer the role play aspect to the combat aspect of the game. Um, and so it just depends on what is preferred at your table, but it still needs to be it's still a great part of the role play too, to have characters die, because it changes the group dynamic, it changes how they react to things, or even just to fail collectively, not necessarily to have a character die, but just overall, it affects the way that they move forward and how they approach things going forward. And so that's not a bad thing by any means. So you have to once again, every table has its own dynamic. I prefer what I prefer. um Ooh, Sphere of Annihilation. Yeah, that was a bad plan. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah, but some characters in their stories are also not trained in excessive ways. I'll give a little insight to Millie's backstory, since yeah, but she was not trained to be sort of a hardcore fighter or anything like that. She learned how to use a blade on a pirate ship with a uh, fairly skilled uh, fighter. Think Inigo Montoya type. And that's how she learned. And she was not trained in any sort of uh, regimented way or any structured particular way. But yeah, but all the characters don't want to die. Exactly. But yeah, just that is something that characters to keep need a sea shanty for Millie's funeral. uh maybe Cade can write us one, because Cade's was great the other day during our Sunday stream. But yeah, so keeping in mind that these people want to fight and do what they do for whatever reason they are going on these adventures. But not everybody is going to be the best at everything. So yeah, but finding the balance in that risk is an important part of it. And keeping critical tables in consideration, like what we use in our games, um utilizing those as D&D player 888. As a DM, my characters ignored multiple warnings in close calls and continued to play stupid. I gave them choices. They got a bad situation. The one that got them there tried to sacrifice himself, and the party tried to save himself, escaping. End result for oof. Yeah, that's I mean, that is choice. That was a choice that they made, and choices sometimes result in bad things. But yeah, so that is something that happens. If you don't always make the wisest choices, you can die, and that needs to be part of it. But yeah, so back to what I was talking about with balance. The balance of the game, keeping in mind, what your party consists of, what their abilities are, and what their level is really important. Along with utilizing things like the critical tables and that sort of thing to make it so that there are times where they can be very, very heroic, but at times there's very high risk of them having those very, very heroic things that happen, that they are able to do to monsters, be done to them. So yeah, keeping that balance going and where it should be um is an important thing to maintain. And yay, John's almost here. So exciting. Um so ancient times never got attached to a character, just roll up another. Nowadays people attach to the least all the tears that were collected, to say the least, all the tears that were collected last night. Yeah, and it is not just the characters that I feel like that people become attached to. It's also just the stories and the relationships that they've created in the role play of the game, because we're all telling stories together. And yeah, it can be a lot. It can feel very a lot. Investment, yes, investment, for sure. Thank you, John. I'm glad that I'm doing well. I appreciate the encouragement. um but yeah, and with the point of having those high risks, there's big rewards. Yeah, and that would make sense, is things like that. From Millie's funeral, haiku, Millie the half-elf, swashbuckler, pirate friend, and we all will miss her grace. Yes, it's the Evelyn show. Thank you, guys. um, so yes. Um, um, we high risk, high reward, I think tends to be the case in the games that we play at at our table. And the high reward doesn't necessarily mean the physical loot based rewards, but literally the story. You get to feel like a hero, and that's pretty cool. And doing things that are impressive feats, hi, can feel really nice. So yeah.
Hey, carry on. You're killing it. Don't worry about me. You carry on.
Okay. So yeah. Let's see. But yeah, I mean, we've seen characters lose limbs and body parts and all sorts of things. So the failure doesn't always mean death. In even with the critical tables that we use, it can mean struggling through and finding ways to have to try to either pay for healing wounds, lost limbs, those sorts of things, or just even having to repair relationships, or the things that you've made way in with maybe a city or a group. So yes, all of those things add up to yes, or in Cade's case, twice lost limbs. Yes, it did make sense to have Gimbal resurrected, given where we were at the time of his death. We were right by where he was from, and the chips just happened to fall the right way to give him that opportunity. And yes, the art that John has pulled up right now is a piece of artwork that was done by Mark Views last night of Millie. He actually whispered me in Instagram last night, and he was like, "I'm working on this art for Millie," and I was like, "Ooh, I love it! It's beautiful." So he sent me like his progress image, and then he sent me the final one before he posted it up into the Discord last night, and I love it so much. And actually my fellow Greyhawk Awakening cast members and I were discussing it and comparing it to the art that Frederica did, and we were talking about how the Frederica art represents Millie's early facade up, overconfident nature, didn't let her walls down. And then Mark's is Millie right at the end, where she was more vulnerable and soft, and how she was with the rest of the Wayward Bolt, because that's who she was at the end.
Well, bravo. And so we don't have a whole lot of thank you very much. I assume you're talking to me, not her. I don't think she's had a haircut recently.
Nope, my hair is as long as it's always been.
And mine was, yeah, you saw last week, mine was way overdue. So look, thank you again. And you're right, Keith. I mean, I try to get her to talk more. She gets kind of quiet sometimes, but I put her on the spot tonight, and she had no choice but to talk. So you've done a great job. And so just a couple things I want to cover. We only have a few minutes left because I do not like overlapping Jay. I don't overlap Jay shows. Like he and I collaborate together, and I make sure that I'm always done in time to raid into his show, not to take away any of his viewers or have any sort of overlap between our shows. So I love the discussion tonight, and I have like a whole list of other points here that I want to talk about. We're going to save these for next week. Okay. We're going to repeat this topic next week, and we're going to get into some of the mechanics of it. We're going to talk about different play styles. We're going to delve into the topics that you talked about conceptually today, and we're going to get into some of the nitty-gritty and talk about permadeath styles, nature of resurrections and raised dead, and what happens, and the frequency and availability of that. And you talked about balance, and we're going to get again into the balance of critical hits and the other aspects of the game. And some things that maybe we haven't really talked about here. I was really thinking about how this works and why the ecosystem works in our environment. And then, no, I know, Jay, you always say that, but that's just not how I roll. You want to know what Evelyn's new character is? I'm sorry, I cannot tell you that.
No spoilers, y'all.
You're going to have to tune in next Tuesday night. We've got a couple Dragon magazines. She already mentioned 144. There's also some stuff in 187 that I have some highlights of. And thank you very much, Vivi. I mean, and yeah, balance is, you guys have said it all tonight. You know, the core of it is you want campaigns that are rife with danger. These are not potato farmers.
Mm-hmm. Nope.
These players are not, they're not just playing, a local townskeeper. They're adventurers, and they're out there. They're engaging evil. And I think with the minutes that we have remaining, yeah, we're interested in hearing your idea, Ranger. With the minutes we have remaining, I'd like to delve more into exactly the what happened over the last 2 episodes in that combat, because there were some clues that I was providing as a DM, and I think there were some. Yes, you can blame the dice. There was a crit, no doubt, and yeah, the nat 20, and then I think on the confirmation I rolled an 18 on the raw roll, so confirm the crit. And then it was a 67, and it's teeth and arms and claw, which is a nasty crit structure in these tables. But, hey, good evening, Bill. But there were some things that led up to that. But before we get into that, I'm thinking, Evelyn, next week, let's see if we can get a couple other people to join us.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
And I have one for sure I want. Tim.
Okay.
Tim, I see you in here, ever mysterious Tim. Would you be willing to join us next week? I'd like you to help participate and represent the point of view of the Merits of the Deadly campaign. So Tim, you let me know if you're willing to jump on with us next Wednesday night. Then, I'd like to know, is there anybody in the chat tonight that would be willing to argue, thank you Tim, would be willing to argue a counter perspective? If you're a DM that just thinks death should either really not happen in games or should be something where resurrection is easier to access, or should be much, it's not common in my campaigns, but it happens. And if there's all of your players, okay. So I know you could, Tim, I could too, but I really want to counterpoint. So if there's anybody in the chat that would be willing to come on next Wednesday night and represent the perspective of the death should be either not a thing or much rarer, or resurrection should be more readily available, then I'd love to have you pop in with us. And we may have to hunt a little harder, because anybody that's watching my shows is probably okay with PC death.
Yeah.
So Evelyn, before we jump into the stuff with last night again, anything else you wanted to cover? Because you were doing a really good job, and I think it was great interaction with the audience. I want to make sure you have a chance to finish your thoughts.
Yeah, I just, if anybody has any other questions about last night, I'm totally willing. I know some people have jumped in since I covered a lot at the beginning of the stream where people were asking me stuff about last night. But please feel free to ask. I will answer. Yeah, so I will have to say that last night, after some little things that John had hinted to me previous to last night's session, that I had gone through the stages of grief for Millie as her player.
Now to be clear, to be clear, I don't want anybody to misunderstand this, because Tim asked me if I had told you what the crit was before the stream.
No, you did not tell me.
But
it's just there were hints.
Yeah. And so I play that up sometimes anyway, but I told her pretty explicitly the crit was bad. Mm-hmm. It was not an instant death. Yeah. But death is very possible depending on the damage roll. So that's all I told her. She knew going into last night.
And the fact that you had texted it to Tim told me that was probably a bad thing, because
I did tell her I told Tim what the roll was.
I did. Then it was probably pretty bad. So as a player, as Millie's player, I had already kind of gone through those stages of grief, and because I needed to be there to be able to be ready to start building in this new character that I have coming up. I thought I would be fine until last night, and everybody started reacting to it. And in that moment, I was like, oh no, I'm not okay. Especially, and every single one of the rest of the Wayward Bolts had their moments, but it was Vivi that broke me. And that callback to that little thing that Millie and Lilith had done all throughout with the perfume, all throughout the campaign, going back to the beginning, right before Millie went to see Galen that night, because that was the very first time she did it, was to help her prep for her date with Galen, and just that repeated gesture of kindness all throughout. That was what got me, and I broke down. So anyway, but yeah, so that would be the biggest thing that I would have to add on about.
Yeah, no, exactly. So that's well said. And we've got a couple Katies in here. Katie, who said a moment ago, and that's artist Cryptoc, that Lilith did kill the Mad Chatters. She absolutely did. And then Katie, Sweet KT 420, I absolutely agree with that. And in fact, you have not been watching us that long, but if you cite the example of Gimbal, that was a resurrection that was allowed in my campaign, and it was based on all the things we've covered 2 or 3 times now. So if you missed that, you can go back and watch it. I'm not going to repeat it. And it was a fantastic story option, because it was not just, oh, you walk in, you pay the cleric, boom, you're healed. There was it was a whole session and a story, and there was drama. There were sacrifices from each player. It was a phenomenal. I thought that was one of our better sessions. I really enjoyed role playing the resurrection of Gimbal. But it's not death. if resurrection is, readily available, if it's on the street corner, then it's not really death. So I think, to me, the whole idea of the risk of death goes hand in hand with the availability and commonality of resurrection.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be easily, I kind of covered this a little bit earlier, but it shouldn't be easily available, because then players feel like either they're indestructible and, oh, well, I can just go get resurrected, or, that there are fewer consequences for the choices that they make, and there need to be consequences, because you don't get better at anything if there's no consequences.
That's right, and to me, it's no fun. That's not
right.
You're playing the role of a hero. You're fighting, dastardly dangerous creatures, and if you feel invulnerable, it changes your whole. I heard you talking earlier about the occasional run away, that, or just a little more strategy at times. I do think this party, because they had been largely successful, they had a couple near deaths, was a bit incautious at times. And now, if that's just your role playing the nature of the PC, that's fine.
Millie.
Like Millie's a good example of that. Like, she really should not have been a frontline fighter, right?
Nope.
She should not have been going toe to toe with an Umber Hulk, but it was kind of the personality of her character. She was very cocky. I think back to that first episode when she was accosted in the alleyway by 3 figures or 2 figures in the darkness, and she was ready to go toe to toe. She didn't even know what they were until the fireball came out or lightning bolt came out of that one's hand. But she could have died there on the first night. She was so cocky.
And she learned a little bit, but she was still rather she's very act before thinking sort of person.
Yeah. Well, yes, and I think, ultra cautious. The party did get more cautious with traps as they went on. Initially they went in there, and, I understand not necessarily looking for traps in the cavern part of that dungeon, right? Because you're in a mine. So maybe you're looking for cave-in areas or things. But the moment you find a secret door that pivots and reveals this sort of ancient temple with finished dwarven stonework, that's the point where the caution antenna should have gone up. Now, the shore wind wandering into the blades didn't ultimately hurt you too much, because you did have the willing healers in the ghosts. But I think that set a certain... So a couple things I wanted to cover from last night.
Yeah.
Really from the week before. So the danger points, I mentioned, first of all, the choke point. And I had actually written out my description of this room prior to tonight, so I know I read this to you. And as I said, here the smooth and flawless walls of dwarven workmanship once more give way to the natural cavernous surfaces of the mine. A narrow corridor winds in serpentine fashion. So I very specifically painted the picture, and then we also had the physical. This was the piece of terrain that I was using, which showed going from the wide choke point to the narrow choke point. And I remember describing that it was really like one brim had to squeeze abreast. And so as you and I believe Shorewin were the first 2 in there, that was the danger point. You had Brim standing all the way at the back. He is the most potent warrior. Shorewin right up there too. But he's all the way at the back, and then so he can't get through. And then when the combat started, if it's strategically done, what should have happened is Shorewin and Millie should have split to the sides of the Umber Hulk. Right? You guys could have. Thank you very much, Robert. You guys could have taken a couple of steps to the sides. You would not have provoked an attack of opportunity. You would have maintained engagement and opened up. But when you began the combat, you both just stayed right there in front of the doorway. And so as that choke point came, so these are just like the little tactical things in combat that as a DM, I'm not going to say, hey, you guys might want to clear a path for the players behind. And then that led to the second mistake in the combat, which could have changed everything. Having Shorewin knocked, to the side because Brim tries to push through him, fails his dex check, bumps him out of the way, and now Shorewin loses an entire round of combat. So those things were the things that, even before the critical roll, I think really put you guys behind the 8 ball. And so I just kind of, just some thoughts I wanted to share.
Well, and for for me, it was just with running 2 characters, trying to keep track of both of them that night. I was trying to make sure that things were going smoothly and to try to not get
That's true.
Showen killed again.
That's true.
So I was like, I kind of got tunnel vision, and that was probably a major part of what my failure on that was as well, because I got tunnel vision about.
Yeah, that's actually, I didn't mean to do it that, because I know you were playing Shorewin that night. So when I referenced you and Shorewin, I was actually referencing you and you. So I wasn't trying to say it was all your fault. But
all my fault. I brought it on myself.
Yeah, the gaze weapon was really was a horrible part of what makes those things so deadly. Umber Hulk in and of itself, it's a tough creature. But for a party of 5, 5th and 6th level characters, if they can bear on it, it's a pretty.
I got the pun there with Lilith Bear.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you got it, because I didn't mean it, but I'll take credit for it. Hey, see you, Jay. We're gonna raid in just a second, but so we're gonna cover all of these topics. So next week, here's what I want to talk about.
Yeah.
The danger in campaigns, which we covered some today, but I want to get specifically into the balance between crits and fumbles, and the difference in certain systems. What you typically see in a 5e or even in base 3.5 crits. And then DMs handle sometimes fumbles differently than they handle crits, and that's an important balancing relationship. And things like confirmation, right. Do you use hero points? Do you use advantages? And then, we've talked about this before, but other things like the use of fate chips or special points, hero points, and other things which create part of your ecosystem of balance. It
right.
should be possible to die, but it should be more likely that the monsters are going to die, right? It should be more likely that the monsters are going to take the crit.
A little bit in the party's favor, but not too much.
Hey, thank you so much. No, I just think the whole idea is similar to, I think, of Vegas. And I think in Vegas, you can win, right? But the odds are stacked toward the casino. The odds are stacked toward the house. They're probably, I do that with the players. The players can die, but the odds are stacked in their favor. And so it's not just the raw you can die. And then I want to talk about things like stabilization and death saves that you see in 5e. What happens in combat when you hit 0? There's different systems that people run for that. Where do you actually die at? What about system shock for large amounts of damage? What if you've got 40 hit points? If you take 38 hit points in one blow, you're not at 0, but should there be an extra effect there? You've just lost 95% of your hit points in one shot. How do you handle that? And then this idea of final death. What about armor damage?
Right.
Why did I have Shorewin on 2 occasions have major rents in his armor? Was that just whimsy on my part?
No, because he took an axe to the gut on one of them, and he took the trap to the chest or midsection on the second one.
Exactly, right. But he also took other blows. Why specifically did those blows create significant damage to the armor? There's a reason I do that, and I don't think I've ever talked about it before.
Big blows, I would imagine.
Big blows, minimum 20 points of damage that knock you unconscious. So if you take more than 20 in a single blow and you get knocked unconscious, that's where I have the opportunity for armor damage, which just to me makes, because I don't want this to be you've got to fix your armor all the time, and it's like, we want realism, but we don't want hyper realism, right? We don't want my favorite phrase, we don't want the tail wagging the dog. So Shorewin took in both those blows massive damage that knocked him below 0. That's why he had armor damage. I want to talk about this idea of encounter balancing.
Right.
CRs, right? CR was a term I think we started seeing in 3.5.
Challenge ratings.
The challenge ratings, and then it's still a big thing in 5e. How much should a DM be focused on balancing encounters? And should every encounter be balanced well? Shouldn't there be some encounters that the players can just, like, I think of those orcs you guys you guys met up with, like, they thought they had something.
That was surprisingly easy.
Yeah, we like, and you just wiped them out, right?
Yeah.
Not every encounter should be super challenging, and not every encounter should be livable. So we talk about CR ratings, and then
that's a different kind of balance,
Exactly.
Balancing it, having both, you know, the ones that are equal to the character's ability level, and then ones that are balancing the super easy and the super challenging fights as well. That it's all a balance. It's just different types of balance.
Yes, exactly. And so, that's exactly right. So, Tim, I basically run an enhanced sandbox, right? I've got narratives and plots and things, but they can do anything, they can go anywhere. And I'm with you, Vivi. I don't balance all the encounters. Now, I'll have a general idea if I know the dungeon or the area they're going into, what's possible, and I'm not just throwing unwinnable fights at them all the time, nor am I throwing, you know, easy kobolds at these level 6 characters all the time. But that definitely can happen. You should have the ability to run into things that you can't fight, or you have the ability to run into things that you can just destroy easily. And then you've got the balance. So Striker Dan said, not always have to look at the surroundings and what type of creatures would live there. That's exactly right. We should have more options instead of fight or die. Bargaining, running away, exactly. Or look at what Gimbal did last night. You know, that was a brilliant play on his part with that spell. It was executed at just the right time, and who knows what would have happened in the next round. If there had been another round of confusion, the Umber Hulk was damaged. I think he had, I'd have to look, I think he had like 30 hit points left or 28 hit points left. So, you know, he wasn't like on death's door, but he could have gone down the next round. But if he wins initiative and confuses another player, you know, then the next thing you know, that could have been a TPK, and Gimbal really kind of saved the day with that.
Yep. There was a question a little bit up earlier in the chat from Set Monkey. He asked if there's a chance that the new character won't find the new part or find the party next Tuesday. I'm thinking that's the what he was asking.
Yeah, okay. So, no, not really. And that's part of what I want to talk about next Wednesday is the last piece I had written down here, introduction of the new characters. You know, the question came up, what level do they start out? I have a certain system that I use. Then also, like, you know, items and equipment, you know, where do they start with that? How do you introduce them? How long do you make them wait? There's some really interesting things in that Dragon 187 I'll show you next week. That really talks about that. And yeah, clues before and that's exactly right, Katie. That's a big thing I do in my games. I give subtle hints. I'm not the kind of DM that will hold the player's hands most times, suggest to them what they should do. I'll let them struggle, I'll let them wander into danger, but I will never, you know, put them in an unwinnable situation where there should not have been something that they should have caught or they should have paid attention to. That to me, I feel like is you know, what a good DM should do. Throw a tribe of kobolds at the PCs and see them cry if the kobolds are ran intelligently. Well, no, that's exactly right. You get a tribe of anything, there can be great strength in numbers. That's exactly one of the critical roles. And like I've got some modifications I'm introducing to criticals as well, because I don't think, and Tim and I have talked about this, if you're a 5th level character and you're fighting a red dragon, I don't think just because you roll a nat 20, and then even let's say you do that 1 in 400 and you roll another nat 20, that means you should have a legit shot to kill that red dragon in one blow. That just, to me, that again, if you're looking for that balance of realism, I think there has to be some context for the balance between the combatants. You know, as a 1st level fighter, does he really have that chance to one-shot kill a 15th level fighter? I mean, anything's possible. You could take a sword through the eye, you could get lucky, but it should be way less likely than that 15th level fighter, and it maybe even more so than the armor class and confirmation differential makes. But anyway, so I'm getting ahead of myself. Bard, the Bard, I know, but Bard was not 1st level. You know, we're assuming that Bard in The Hobbit was an experienced ranger. So I'm not saying you can't one-shot kill a dragon. I'm just saying a 1st level character probably can't one-shot kill a dragon. Probably. That's just my take. All right, so I'm writing up the armor modifications to the crits. Yeah, that's something he and I have been talking about. All right, so for next week, we'll be back at the same time. I will start on time next week. If I have to just take the day off, we're going to start on time next week. And we're going to have the ever mysterious Tim joining us. on Wednesday night. Of course, we've got our Greyhawk Awakening stream on Tuesday night, which I'll be up at 4 in the morning driving back from Florida to make sure I'm here for. We will not have our Rune Lord session on Sunday, but we'll be back the following Sunday. And then I'm going to try to get one person to represent the I don't think death should be as big a part of D&D. If you want to represent that perspective, I'd love to have you come on with us next week at Loremaster's Arcanum, and I promise not to make fun of you. Kind of. All right?
Mostly.
All right. Yeah, you might be right, Keith. You might be right. Okay, so we're going to go ahead here. We're going to raid Jay. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Really appreciate all the support. Let me open up another tab here and drag it down so I can get my Twitch back up. And any final questions before we conduct our raid of Lord Gazumba?
Raid!
Anybody have any final questions, final comments? This is your chance for your voice to be heard. Hey, thank you, Katie.
Interesting to see the vacation request form for next week.
It would be. It would be, wouldn't it? Tim still wants to know what the character is.
Find out.
Can you give them one hint? Nothing that'll give it away, but for those that have stuck with us to the end here, give them one hint.
Oh,
How about
giving it away?
So I will say this: there was a movie that had something about this character in the title. Is that fair?
I could see that.
You know where I'm going with that? Do you know which one I'm talking about?
I will give a hint about. I will give the race away. I'll do that.
Okay.
I'll give the race away. She is the same race as Millie was, and that's what I will say.
All right. So same race as Millie, and there was a movie. I'm not even going to tell if it was a fantasy movie because it would be too easy. But I mean, you know, you can draw conclusions, right? I probably wouldn't have brought it up if it wasn't related to the genre. That's the only hint I'm going to give you. We'll see if anybody can figure it out. Doodling ideas. All right, Mark. All right, everybody. Have a great night. We'll see you next week. Much love from Blue Box. Thank you again, Evelyn. Great job.
And we're raiding with
22.